To export this sequence to a file, let's just go under File, Export, Media. Of course, make sure that the correct sequence is the one that is selected. In this case, is of course the Rancho Playa final. You can also use the shortcut, which is Control or Command M. Think of M for media or movie. And this opens the Export Settings dialog box. In here we can set the format. We can export as an AIFF, that's an audio only, waveform, DPX, JPEG, MP3, obviously audio, P2, PNG, QuickTime, etc., etc. Once you choose the file format that you want to use, and let me go ahead and use QuickTime, then you can choose from here any preset that you may need to use. In this case, none of these presets actually agrees with the settings that I want to use. So let's go ahead and go through some of these settings in the Adobe Media Encoder. Output name, you can change this. This is the name that your file is going to have once you export it. Export video, export audio, yes, that is exactly what I want to do. This is the summary. I don't want 720 by 480, so we're going to go ahead and change that. The first thing here under the video tab is we can change the video codec, and this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to click in here and I'm going to choose the animation codec. This codec is considered a lossless codec. This is one that you can use to produce a high quality video. In other words, a video that is going to be compressed very little and is going to lose very little of the information that the file has. So animation compression is a great choice. You can change the quality, you can change the settings, width and height. In this case, the original one happens to have been 1440 by 1080. So let's go ahead and change that. I'm going to deselect the keep proportions. So 1440, 1080 for the height. We're going to use the upper field first, and the aspect ratio is going to be 1:1.33, which is anamorphic. I can choose to render at maximum depth, which will give me 32-bit rendering. Right now I don't wish to render the alpha channel because that's non-important for this particular work, so I'll leave it at 24. I can choose different keyframes and different settings than what is selected in here, but for this particular codec that is going to be irrelevant because the QuickTime animation compression codec happens to be iframe. What that means is that each and every frame is going to contain all of the information that it needs to contain to display on itself. In other words, the temporal compression is going to be non-existent for this particular codec. You can also change the bitrate if you wish to, but for this codec, I don't wish to do so. I want it at the maximum quality, and that's what I'm getting. So the video is pretty much what I need it to be. Now I'm going to go ahead and click on the audio. And I do want it uncompressed. If I wanted to load this up directly onto a server, I could FTP it. I don't wish to do that, so I'm going to leave that unchecked. And I can even add a little Gaussian filter if I need to, but I won't do that. Let's go to the output pane right here. And as you can see, it's identical to the source. I don't see any kind of horizontal or vertical black bars. I don't need to crop this. I need it to go into the original because I'm sending this to a TV station. All I have to do now is click on rendered and I should be fine. There are these buttons at the bottom here. The one for metadata, in which I can select what kind of metadata I want to keep. Most of the time, if I'm delivering this to a TV station, I may want to embed just some of it, or maybe embed an output in file, but just some of it. But most of the time I'm going to choose none, because I don't wish for anybody at the TV station to know exactly when I did it. Some of the information in the metadata is not relevant to some of the clients, so it's not appropriate to include it. Things like copyright would be appropriate to include, so you can always go, embed some and put it either in the file or in a sidecar file. A sidecar file is going to be a separate file that people can choose to delete or not. If you choose embed in output file, then in here you can say exclude all, preserve all, or you can have different templates for what you're going to include. And remember that in the metadata, you can choose things like copyright information, etc., etc. Right now I'm going to leave this at none. You can also choose to send this to the render queue. This opens the Adobe Media Encoder. The render queue is this panel right here. Once you have things in the render queue, you can duplicate them, you can add other things, etc., etc. So the render queue is just going to allow you to export either the same file in different formats or different files in different formats, however you want, without having to do them one by one. For example, if I wanted to do this exact same commercial not only on QuickTime to send to the TV station, but maybe on DVD to send to my client, I could easily just duplicate it by clicking on duplicate, and I could choose a different format, say the MPEG-2 DVD, and from in here I could match the source in high quality, and there you go. So once I click on Start Queue, it would render first the first one, this one, and then the second one, and it'll just do it without my having to select anything else or click anywhere else. By the same time, I can duplicate it again, and instead of for DVD, maybe my client wants to put it on their website, so I could select, say, an FLV or F4V file, and I can change the settings in here, say to FLV, that's a flash video file, and now it's going to do all three of them one after the other without my intervention. So I could have it rendered overnight or whatever, maybe during lunch or during a phone call or whatever I need to, depending on the length of the videos. Once I'm done, all I have to do is click on Start Queue, and all of these files would be created. So the rendering queue is really, really important. Of course, as we saw in the other panel, and we can access it again by just clicking on the words here, for example, on the word custom, on the word match source attributes, etc., etc., and it opens that other panel that we had before, which is the export settings panel. I could choose to just export it right away without going to the queue. Again, if you need to export this in more than one format for different purposes, then go to the queue and you only click on the export once.